Hello everyone, welcome back. Today I'm going to be sharing a game between Robert James Fischer and Samuel Reshevsky, and it's part of my 1970 Palma de Mallorca Interzonal series. And in this game, it was a masterpiece by Fischer, and he played extremely well with a 99.2 accuracy. And although this game was extremely short, there were still a lot of motives demonstrated. So let's get started. d4, knight f6, c4, and c5. Now here normally white plays d5 and goes into a Benoni. However, here Reshevsky decided to play the move knight f3, which goes into the anti-Benoni, which is a sideline compared to the main variation. After c takes, knight takes, e6, knight c3, bishop b4. This position is also an equally strong idea, but now this line should be more or less fine for black due to white's not misplaying, but alternate way of playing. In this case, e3, knight e4, queen c2, knight takes, bishop takes, and bishop e7 are played. And this looks like white has doubled pawns, but white has the lead in development, and black's bishop on c8 is on a very stuck position. And in this case here, bishop e2 is played, castles, a6, f4, d6, f5. In this case, usually here, f5 is not the best move. In this position, it was a lot better for white to play rook b1 instead, because the move rook b1 is able to attack the b7 pawn and thus allow other moves like bishop f3 to come, and this b7 pawn should be a weakness. And after something like e5, knight f5, bishop takes, queen takes, e takes. Here rook takes b7, and white is a lot better here. And if black continues to take pawns, white can just take back. And in this position, white is winning because all these pieces are not developed here, while white's pieces are all attacking the king. All of these pieces are attacking here. And this is why this position is extremely good for white, because now white can just start playing bishop b3, attack h7, bring that bishop to d4, even maybe sacrifice on g7, etc., etc. So after d6, however, Reshevsky played the move f5, and after this, e takes f5 was played, knight takes f5, bishop takes f5, queen takes f5, knight d7, bishop f3, queen c7, rook b1, and then rook a b8. And in this position, it is usually very good for black now, because black's now fully developed all his pieces, while white still has these weak pawns, plus an extra weakness on e3. And here, the move bishop d5 is played, and after knight f6, bishop a3, and after rook f8, here, Reshevsky plays another bad move, queen d3. In this position, the better move in this position would have been to play rook f3, which brings a rook up into the position and try to attack black's king. And after this continuation, white is more or less okay. But the main reason why queen d3 is bad is in this position, the move knight takes d5 can be played for black. Normally, after knight takes d5, the move queen takes f7 will come, and all of a sudden, black will not have a good position. Instead, in this position, after queen d3, now knight takes d5 does work. And after c takes d5, in this position, here black has an excellent positional move, which Fischer found. So take your time and maybe you can spot this move too. Okay, if you found the move, congratulations. The move that's correct in this position is the move b5. And the main reason why the move b5 is so good is because that it allows the pawn on c3 to stay there. Normally, if the pawn comes to c4, then the bishop on a3 could come to b2 and enter the long diagonal, and that would not be good for black. But the move b5 controls the c3 pawn. In this position, after e4, for example, and just coming back actually to b5, if the move bishop f6 was played, which looks extremely natural at first sight, white can simply just take on f6 with the rook. And after g takes f6, white is down a full exchange, but after the move e4, white isn't that worse in this position because black has this ugly pawn structure, and white can easily bring his rook here, brings bishop here to h6. And if the move rook bc8 is played, here c4 can just be played. Because if the trade occurs in this position, white should be okay here now after the rook enters the 7th rank. So that's why in this position, b5 was played. And after b5, here white plays the move e4. And after bishop f8, rook b4, rook e5, c4, rook b8, c takes, a takes, and in this position, Fischer finds the correct pawn to attack, which is e4. So just coming back to e4, rook e5, c4, here Fischer's positional technique was extremely good to focus more on the e pawn and less on the c pawn, which is just about to be exchanged. And because of this, now this e pawn is extremely weak, and black now puts all 3 of his pieces on that one pawn. And here Reshevsky doesn't play the best move. He decides to take on b5, although in this position, rook e1 is probably the best move, just to hang on to this pawn. And after the move f5, the move bishop b2 can be played, forcing the rook to take. And after rook b takes e4, f takes e4, queen takes b5, in this position, white is more or less fine. But after queen takes b5, now Fischer plays rook takes e4, and after rook takes, the queen on e4 is an absolute monster on the board. It controls all the squares, and if you know about an empty board with the queen in the center, it can control 27 squares. Now obviously it cannot control 27 in this position, but it just shows that this queen is a lot better than this queen over here, which is on the side. However, here Reshevsky finds the best move to hold a draw. So take your time and maybe you can spot the move too. Okay, so if you found the answer, congratulations, because now in this position, the move here is queen d7. And here, now the f7 pawn is being under attack, and there's not really a good way to defend other than Fischer's next move. However, in this position, if rook e7 was played, here now the d6 pawn falls, and all of a sudden black's advantage is almost gone. And here black's best move is just to play rook e8, and after the move queen g3, because white needs to protect his bishop, after bishop takes, and queen takes d5, here it's just practically equal. Which is why rook e7 doesn't work in this position, and black only has one way to maintain his advantage, which is the move queen f4. And the main reason why this move works is because after rook takes f4, there's a mate coming up with rook e1. And if queen takes e8, then queen takes f1 would be the mate. Which is why in this position here, the best move here for white would have been queen b5 to protect that rook again, and now capturing the queen is an actual threat. And queen b5 is the only move that actually maintains a good advantage for, well, solid disadvantage for white, because all other moves are just losing on the spot. For example, in this position, if rook g1, now the move rook e2 comes in, attacking a2, and there's no way to defend that pawn, and then black's going to be up a pawn, followed by queen f2, and attacking all of these pieces over here. And after queen d8 in this position, rook takes a2 can be played. After bishop takes d6, queen takes, bishop takes, and black is just up a piece for nothing. If the bishop did not take on d6 and the bishop went to c1, then now just queen e5, picking up d5, black's going to be up 2 pawns. That rook on g1 is horrible, and black's just winning easily. And after queen f4, here Reshevsky played an even worse move and allowed Fischer to finish off the game with a beautiful tactic. Here Reshevsky played the move king g1. And here, take your time, pause the video, and see if you can find the tactic that Fischer played to win the game on the spot. Okay, if you found the move, congratulations. The correct move in this position is to play the move queen d4 check. And here king h1 is forced. If rook f2, rook e1 is main and what. So here king h1 must be played. And after that, here Fischer plays the next brilliant move, and in fact was the last move of the game. Here Fischer plays the move queen f2, the only winning move, yet powerful enough to decide the game right on the spot. So why does the move queen f2 work? Well, it's the same principle as the queen on f4, but now there's a new threat in the game. Rook rook to e1. And there's no way to stop this threat. The normal move queen b5 will just be met by the move rook e1. Rook takes, queen takes will result in a mate. And if you play h3 in order to prevent mate, then rook takes f1 can be played, and now you must give up your queen. And now black's up a queen. If you don't give up your queen and play king h2, then queen f4 check comes, and after g3, queen comes back with mate. So thus, in this position, here the move rook e1 is a completely winning move. However, in this position, after queen b5, now after queen b5, after that there's rook e1, and there's no way to move the rook. If you play rook g1, then the rook equally comes back to e1, and there's no way of stopping mate. And other than that, there's no way to stop rook e1 and followed by mating, which is why in this position Reshevsky resigned. So that was the end of the game. It was only 30 moves long, extremely short. But why did Fischer win so easily? Well, firstly, it was the positional inequality at the very start of the game, where the knights were traded, and then you see these doubled c-pawns. So if you've made it to this part of the video, that's great because you've seen the brief analysis, but here comes the summary. After b takes c3, now white has doubled c-pawns, but white has the lead in development, as now the bishop needs to move again. And after more developing moves come along, here f5 was the first mistake, which allowed too many exchanges of pieces. Instead of playing f5 in this position, white could have played anything else that would have worked, but in fact, after f4 d6, here the move rook b1 would have been better, because the b7 pawn will be a weakness if black doesn't develop on time. And as you would have seen in the actual game, black played b5 sometime, and followed by bringing his bishop to exchange on f5. Notice that this bishop on c8 is a horrible piece, which makes f5 even worse, because after f5, e takes, knight takes, the bishop is traded off in just one move when it was a horrible bishop on c8. And after knight d7, here black has almost finished his development, and white has all these weak pawns and hasn't even developed his bishop. After bishop f3, queen c7, rook b1, rook a b8, and here the move bishop d5 to attack here. Now the development of black is sufficient enough to counter push against white's attacks, and here black is just slightly better. After bishop a3, rook f8, queen d3, knight takes d5, c takes d5, and here Fischer plays an absolute brilliant positional move, the move b5, and now the c3 pawn is stymied, it can't move, and now the bishop's coming to f6, and now queens and rooks are coming to c4, and this position just better for black. And after e4, bishop f8, bishop f8 was another type of move where you hide the bishop on f8 in order to bring the g7 sometime, although that was never played in the game. And after rook b4, rook e5, after c4, here Fischer finds the correct plan to attack the e5 pawn and give up on the c file. He plays rook b8, after c takes, a takes. If you take on b5 with one of your pieces as white, then the e4 pawn will fall, which is what Fischer calculated. And in this position, after the move king h1, which was played, here the move queen e7 puts a triple battery ram on e4. And because the e4 pawn, as you saw, was extremely important, a move rook e1 would have been a better move compared to the game continuation, which was queen takes b5. And after this, rook takes c4, rook takes, and then queen takes. In this position, black is slightly better, although after the move queen d7, queen f4, if Reshevsky found the move queen b5 again, then in this position, after queen e3, this is another sideline, bishop b4 can be played, and after the move rook e5 to try to round up this pawn, white can play the move queen c4, and now black is the one that needs to worry about his back rank anytime. After rook e4, queen b5, queen d4, and now the move a3 to protect the bishop, and in this position white is okay because the queen is protecting the rook, and now white is in a solid position. Instead, after queen f4, Reshevsky played the fatal move king g1, and Fischer finished off his already very strong game with queen d4 check and queen f2. Now the move rook e1 is a huge threat, and now the game is over. So I hope that you learned something from this video, and I guess that Fischer played an absolute masterpiece. In fact, his accuracy, if I didn't mention it before already, it was a 99.2% accuracy, and it was just an absolute brilliant piece, and Reshevsky just got absolutely obliterated. So I hope that I'll see you in the next video, and well, I'll see you then. Bye bye.